My name is Madison now, but it was not always so. There was a time when I answered to Dylan, when I earned my living with calloused hands at the stamping plant, when I believed I understood exactly who I was and what my future held. That man feels like a stranger to me now, someone I once knew but can barely remember. If you had told me back then that I would one day greet my wife at the door wearing heels, that I would spend my afternoons perfecting my eyeliner and eagerly awaiting her approval, that I would feel more alive and more myself in a skirt than I ever did in work boots, I would have laughed in your face, or maybe thrown a punch. But life has a way of shattering everything you think you know. It all began with a car crash. Believe it or not, Rebecca and I were in a serious accident just a few miles from our home in Riverside, Oregon, on the very day of our wedding. We had been headed to Portland for our honeymoon when some reckless fool ran us off the road in the middle of a snowstorm. The car flipped over multiple times before we finally came to rest in a ditch. I should have learned my lesson by then. That was the second car I had totaled in just a few years. We were fortunate to be alive at all. By some miracle, Rebecca walked away without a scratch. I, on the other hand, would never be the same again. My back was so badly damaged that even the stamping plant where I had worked for years refused to take me back, not even as a janitor. They worried that the simple motion of pushing a broom might lead me to file a workers' compensation claim against them. Or worse, that I might not be able to move out of the way of an oncoming forklift quickly enough. So I found myself forced to apply for disability income after 3 separate physicians certified me as permanently unemployable. After roughly 6 months of battling the system, fighting through endless paperwork and appeals, I was finally granted a disability pension. It came out to almost the same amount I had earned at the plant, minus the overtime. I was only 26 years old at the time. I suppose that explained why they had fought my claim so vigorously. Beyond the damage to my spine, I had also lost my once robust appetite. My weight dropped from 175 pounds on my 5'7" frame down to just 135. I looked rather delicate for a man, I am afraid to admit. I felt that way too, especially around my former coworkers. They would slap me on the back in greeting and nearly knock me off my feet. But that was not the worst of it. It became painfully clear that we could not maintain any reasonable standard of living on my disability income alone, not without the overtime pay I used to bring home. So, using the settlement money from the other driver's insurance company, I sent Rebecca to nursing school. That had always been her dream. She was a natural nurturer, though I noticed she could be somewhat bossy with me at times. I assumed she was simply releasing the tensions that built up from her studies and clinical work, so I did not give it much thought. Having nothing meaningful to occupy your time when you are that young is a genuine burden, I can tell you. It can seriously erode your sense of self-worth. I desperately needed to reclaim that feeling somehow. As a man, your value tends to be tied to what you do. You are what you do. I suppose the same holds true for some women as well. Society does not place much value on being a mother or a housewife, but there is tremendous worth in those roles. I knew that firsthand. I had always appreciated the countless hours my own mother invested in our home, keeping everything running smoothly and making sure Dad was content. When it comes down to it, mothers are the ones who truly raise the children, regardless of whether those children are boys or girls. There were mornings back when I still had a job, dragging myself out of bed before dawn, when I envied my mother's ability to simply wake up and begin her work right there at home. Now I found myself trying to figure out how to fill all that empty time, with no job to report to anymore. Truthfully, I had slipped into a depression, and it showed. Being a nursing student with access to medical professionals, Rebecca decided I should see a psychiatrist she had met through her program. We arrived at the appointed hour and were ushered into his consultation room. The doctor settled into his chair across from us and studied me for a moment. "Well, Mr. Henderson, Dylan, is it not? I understand you have been experiencing something of an identity crisis since losing your livelihood. Would that be an accurate summary?" "Yes, doctor, that sums it up fairly well. I'm having trouble coming to terms with being left in charge of the household. I was never raised to keep house, and I have these conflicting feelings about it. I honestly do not know what to do. I see. Well, in cases like yours, we typically prescribe what I call the quick and dirty solution. Given the nature of your disability, we can reasonably assume you will be taking on the role of a house husband for the foreseeable future. And with your current build, this approach should work out quite nicely. We could spend your money on months of psychotherapy, or we can simply provide you with some medication that will help you adjust to your new role in life. How does that sound to you? I suppose that would be fine, doctor. Whatever you can do, I would truly appreciate it. I hate feeling at odds with myself. I genuinely want to handle the domestic responsibilities for Rebecca's sake, so she does not have to worry about them after long days at school and work. I would really like to feel in harmony with my life again. Very well. Here are 3 prescriptions that will help you adjust to your new circumstances. Take them exactly as directed. 2 are for oral medications, and 1 is for an injection that your wife can administer to you once a week. These will all work together to help you adapt to being at home and embracing your new responsibilities. You should expect some side effects, but do your best to welcome them. I believe you will come to genuinely enjoy them in time. Trust me, it is for your own good. Just be faithful in taking your medication and diligent in carrying out your new duties. You should find yourself living a very satisfying life in no time at all. Come back to see me in 2 or 3 months so I can evaluate your progress. Thank you, doctor. We will, Rebecca said on my behalf. We left his office without giving it too much additional thought at the time. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of restlessness. I loved playing billiards, always had, but I could not exactly live in a pool hall. Besides, between table rentals and the inevitable side bets, it became an expensive pastime we could no longer afford. Then Rebecca came up with an idea. Perhaps I would enjoy genuinely taking care of the house, the yard, and the flower beds, all the things she used to manage before nursing school consumed her life. We had discussed it casually before, of course, but now we were considering the implications in earnest. Taking on these responsibilities would truly place me in the role of a housewife. There was no way around that reality. But at least it would give me purpose and direction, 2 things I desperately lacked. The effects of the pills and weekly injections had not taken hold yet, or so I believed, and I remained at odds with myself. Truthfully, I had no idea what to expect from the medication anyway. The doctor had been rather vague about the specifics. I had always appreciated how immaculately Rebecca kept our home. Frankly, I was not certain I could live up to her standards. But what the heck, I decided to give it an honest try. The place was already beginning to show signs of neglect, and I remembered how much pleasure my mother seemed to derive from seeing everything nice and orderly around her. As long as I did not sit around all day munching on bonbons, getting fat, and watching soap operas, I could accomplish some real work and feel good about myself again. Poor Rebecca had been coming home exhausted after her long shifts and clinical rotations, then trying desperately to play catch-up on the housework. She was looking genuinely tired, worn down to the bone. I felt a growing sense of guilt about that, even though the medication supposedly had not kicked in yet. Truth be told, we had no clear idea what exactly those prescriptions were supposed to do for me. Well, at least I did not have any idea. It took me a couple of months, but I finally established a workable routine. Gradually, I learned how to handle all that typically feminine domestic work that Rebecca had absorbed naturally at her mother's side growing up. I had to figure most of it out through trial and error, with occasional pointers from Becca when she was available. She was rarely home during my learning process, so I muddled through on my own. The tasks I absolutely could not decipher, like how to properly iron a dress shirt without leaving creases in all the wrong places, Rebecca demonstrated for me with patient hands. And then it happened. I became a neat freak, just like her. It crept up on me so gradually that I never saw it coming. Oh, woe was me. I did not even feel the transformation taking place. All of a sudden, A clean house meant every single dish washed immediately after use. Not a speck of dust anywhere to be found. All the laundry washed and ironed and put away, floors spotless and gleaming. Both Rebecca's clothes and my own folded precisely or hung smoothly, without a single wrinkle. Beds made with hospital corners each morning, and my satin nightshirt hung neatly in the closet rather than tossed over a chair. I had done it. Nothing was out of place anywhere in our home. Except for me, of course. I suppose the medication was finally working. About time, too, thank heaven for small mercies. Before long, I found myself standing at the front door each evening when Rebecca arrived home, a refreshing drink already prepared and waiting in my hand for her. How utterly cliché I had become. I was transforming into a genuine housewife far more than any mere house husband, and the realization left me feeling somewhat out of place. To address that discomfort, I decided to wear a pinafore apron over my clothes while cleaning and doing dishes. If I had to serve as some form of domestic help around here, a proper apron seemed entirely appropriate for the role. I know I was still wearing blue jeans underneath, but somehow the pinafore felt more in keeping with my new duties. I actually kind of liked it, to be perfectly honest. It was, as they say, job-appropriate attire. Dressing a little more domestically made me feel somehow more settled, more comfortable in my own skin. I truly could not explain why, but lately I felt increasingly motivated in that wifely direction. I had made no conscious connection between these emerging feelings and my medication at this point, but it was having an insidious effect on me nonetheless, reshaping my attitudes in ways I did not fully recognize. I even taught myself to iron shirts and blouses with genuine skill after Rebecca's initial instructions. The flat items like pillowcases and napkins were easy enough. Garments with sleeves and collars required more finesse, but I mastered them eventually. The problem was that I did not really own any comfortable junk clothing suitable for heavy cleaning or kneeling in the flower beds. Knowing what Rebecca typically wore for such tasks, I began wearing that nice pinafore apron paired with a pair of her capri pants around the house during the day. The weather was growing warmer, and my heavy jeans had become rather uncomfortable in the heat. The first time Rebecca came home and discovered me dressed like this, she laughed so hard she had to sit down on the sofa before she collapsed onto the floor. I genuinely thought she was going to wet herself from the force of her giggles. All right. Now my feelings are hurt. What exactly is so funny? Is it me wearing an apron and capri pants? No, no, she managed to say, struggling to regain some composure between fits of laughter. The apron and capri pants are perfectly fine. I mean, you are the keeper of this house now, and can wear whatever you find comfortable. But do you not think that outfit would look considerably more domestic and appropriate without those rugged mountain boots sticking out at the bottom? That is an absolutely ridiculous look for a house husband. For heaven's sake, Dylan, put something lighter on your feet. Like what? A pair of slip-ons? I do not own any. My loafers fell apart months ago, remember? Oh, yes, that is right. Well, wear my slip-ons then. I have several pairs of flats. Would it really kill you to try them? I might survive the experience, but then I would be dressed like a girl right down to my toes. Do not get me wrong, Rebecca. There is absolutely nothing wrong with looking like a girl. You manage it quite beautifully every single day. But me? You would actually be willing to have me wear your shoes or your clothing while I work around the house. Well, you are rather in my shoes already in a very real sense, are you not? And you're already wearing some of my clothes, too. The capri pants, for instance. I suppose I see your point. I could always buy you some shorts and nice lightweight tops if you prefer, she offered. No, the capris are fine for now. Why had I said for now? The words had slipped out before I could consider them. Under the circumstances, I really think you will come to like wearing flats, Becca said with a knowing smile. They are incredibly light and comfortable compared to those clodhoppers of yours. You are not climbing a mountain here, Dylan. You are homemaking now, remember? You need an identity to call your own, and homemaker is a perfectly respected one. That role requires a kinder, gentler dress code. Something more domestic. Feminine even, if adopting it will not wound your masculine ego to death. All right, all right. I cannot believe I am actually going along with wearing women's shoes, but I will go change into them. I have to wonder what on earth is in that medication the doctor prescribed. Oh, just one thing before you go, Rebecca called after me. I do not want you tearing up the linings of my flats with your bare feet, so please wear a pair of my opaque socks or my satin knee-high hose with them. All right? Yeah, that makes sense. I do not want my feet sticking to them either. I have always hated sticky shoes. That is precisely why I never went sockless with my loafers the way some men do. Only now I do not have any loafers left. I absolutely hate going without hose or socks or, you know what I mean. Rebecca just smiled at my flustered rambling. Well, she turned out to be completely right. A pair of flats absolutely beat my hiking boots for comfort around the house. It felt like wearing almost nothing on my feet at all compared to those heavy boots. The flats looked rather like elegant slippers, but terribly feminine and surprisingly cute, even on my feet. I discovered that Rebecca and I wore the same size, though our sizes were technically different numbers. Men's and women's shoes must be measured on different scales. I had just learned something new about the world. I noticed they turned my big toe inward slightly, but they remained remarkably comfortable despite that minor adjustment. I had chosen a pair of her white patterned opaque knee-highs to wear underneath, as I felt somewhat put off by the idea of sheer hosiery at this point in my journey. Even so, the knee-highs were undeniably satiny against my skin, and I had never experienced anything quite like that sensation on my legs before. It felt very pleasant indeed. There was something quietly sensual about it, even with my hairy legs showing above the delicate fabric. That incongruous image did give me pause, I must admit. A leg ending in such a pretty shoe probably should not look like it belongs to a lumberjack. Oh well, I thought. One step at a time. I genuinely liked the way my feet looked, though. They appeared almost cute, and I thoroughly enjoyed the way the shoes felt as I walked. I will confess that wearing them left me slightly aroused in a way I had not anticipated. Perhaps I could come to enjoy this arrangement, given enough time. A woman's place is in the home, they used to say in generations past. Then someone clever coined a new phrase. A woman's place is at the mall. I could just picture myself wandering through a shopping center in my capri pants and ballet flats. Absolutely not. That image remained too far beyond my comfort zone to contemplate seriously. I cannot pinpoint exactly when the shift occurred in my thinking, but gradually, I truly became the lady of the house in my own mind. Rebecca was out in the world doing what I had always considered the masculine thing, earning us a respectable living. She had even proven herself a surprisingly capable mechanic when our car developed problems. Meanwhile, I had begun contemplating how to take better care of her, the same way she used to take care of me when our roles were reversed. I believe I even started moving differently, a consequence of wearing shoes so light and comfortable, and those capri pants that fit rather snugly around my hips. When I performed my housework with my pinafore tied securely in place, I found myself somehow incapable of thinking like a man anymore. Not even like a male, really. I had begun thinking like a housewife, and that mental framework felt surprisingly natural. Comfortable even. I believe I even adopted a subtle wiggle in my walk during those days. It felt a little theatrical, perhaps even campy, but I found I did not particularly care what anyone might think. The doctor had promised the medication would help me adjust to my new situation in life. Thinking of myself as a wife no longer struck me as repugnant, the way it certainly would have before the accident. How strange that transformation seemed when I paused to reflect on it. But then again, I had never imagined I would see the day when my body would begin losing its muscle tone so dramatically, and that was certainly happening as well. Curiously, performing certain household tasks actually became easier without all that bulky muscle getting in the way. I appreciated that unexpected benefit. My body fat seemed to be redistributing itself too, settling into new places I had never carried weight before. I wore that apron constantly now, the full pinafore style that went over my head and tied at the waist. The neighbors could see me outside hosing down the sidewalk in it, or sweeping the front porch with practiced strokes. Strangely, I no longer cared much what they might think. With my capris or shorts visible beneath the apron, I suppose I looked like I was wearing a skirt from any distance. I never bothered to change out of my flats or sandals when stepping outside, and with my hair growing longer now, falling in soft waves past my shoulders, well, I could certainly understand how someone might form the wrong impression when observing me from across the street. Since I had also taken over the grocery shopping duties, I found myself encountering the same neighborhood ladies at the stores each week, pushing my cart down familiar aisles. Of course, I never wore Rebecca's clothes to the store. Although I must confess, the idea did cross my mind on more than a few occasions. My own garments had begun to feel unbearably scratchy against my skin compared to the softer fabrics she owned. During those weekly shopping trips, I gradually struck up conversations with the neighborhood women. You know how it is, the way ladies naturally chat in grocery store aisles when they happen to be the congenial type. People have always told me I possess that quality myself. No, not that I was a woman, that I was congenial. An important distinction, at least back then. I genuinely looked forward to those encounters now, to the easy flow of feminine conversation. Let me tell you something I discovered. Women talk about absolutely everything imaginable, nothing off limits, nothing too personal or too trivial. After a while, my being male did not seem to matter much to them once they got to know me as a regular presence in their social circle. I could not quite determine whether I was somehow changing them or they were gradually changing me, but something significant was definitely happening to my thought patterns. I even sounded different to my own ears lately. I suppose I was unconsciously absorbing their language, their expressions, their vocal inflections, even their expressive hand gestures. I found myself becoming remarkably comfortable in my new role, despite all my original fears and reservations. I could scarcely believe how expressive I had become around these women. I swear I was genuinely beginning to act feminine, like one of the girls in our little, informal group. Since I did not own any truly casual footwear anymore, a fact made obvious by my wearing Rebecca's flats and sandals around the house, instead of proper men's casuals I simply did not possess, she decided to buy me a couple pairs of moccasins. They featured several colors of leather, woven attractively across the vamp, and seemed perfect for shopping excursions and errands around town. The cut struck me as rather low, straight across the top of the foot, with a decorative little leather string tie on the vamp. They proved wonderfully comfortable and lightweight, almost like walking barefoot, so I began wearing them for grocery runs and various trips around the neighborhood. They had a low wedge heel that made my feet appear surprisingly tiny, though I would not have called them particularly sexy. I suspected they might not even be men's shoes at all, but that realization did not upset me the way it once would have. I thought they looked rather cute on me. The following week, Rebecca came home carrying a shoebox and presented me with a pair of black patent skimmer flats featuring a slightly raised, sculptured heel. They gleamed under the kitchen lights. "Did you get yourself a new pair of shoes?" I asked her. "They are really very cute." They were undeniably feminine, sexily low-cut across the vamp in that elegant way women's dress shoes often are. "No, dear, I got you a new pair." "Pretty, are they not? Do you like them?" Well, yes. They are genuinely beautiful. But for me, I asked with considerably more excitement than I had expected to feel. "You actually want me to wear these sexy, feminine dress shoes? You truly would not mind seeing your husband in them?" "Yes, if you are willing to try them. I would love to see you wearing them, and I think you will genuinely enjoy how they feel. Honestly, I hate seeing you deprived of some of the pretty things a housewife would normally get to wear in her daily life. Frankly, I have felt somewhat guilty about your new circumstances, and I want you to look good and feel good and become truly comfortable with your situation, just like the doctor recommended. Would you like me to try them on right now?" "Of course I would. I think they will look absolutely darling on you. Go put on a pair of my slacks first so we can see the full effect. Well, not with these thick socks I am wearing. They will ruin the look completely. You are absolutely right. Better put on some regular sheer knee-highs too. With the delicate hosiery and feminine slacks came a sudden realization that washed over me. These were unmistakably feminine and sexy women's dress shoes, and they fit my feet perfectly, as though they had been made specifically for me. They would probably look just as appropriate paired with a skirt, and for one fleeting instant, the idea of returning to show Rebecca while wearing a skirt flickered through my mind. The thought departed just as quickly as it had arrived, but it had been there nonetheless. Well, I reasoned to myself, I am performing women's work every single day. I think I deserve to look a little sexy while doing it. I realized with startling clarity that I absolutely loved these shoes. Black patent leather possessed such an undeniable sexiness to it. What on earth was happening to my thinking? Just because I was keeping house did not mean I had to dress like a woman. And yet the idea held definite appeal for me now, an appeal I could no longer easily dismiss. Was it the weekly shots causing these shifts in my desires? What exactly was in this medication I had been taking so faithfully? Was this what the doctor had meant when he promised it would help me adjust to my circumstances? The quick and dirty solution, he had called it. I found myself wondering what might come next in this gradual transformation. Rebecca possessed a broader bottom than mine, but her slacks fit me surprisingly well through the hips and thighs. Heaven knows I had been having quite a difficult time squeezing into my old jeans lately. They had grown impossibly tight in some places while hanging loose in others. I caught myself wondering what it might feel like to wear panties beneath these slacks. They certainly felt lovely against Rebecca's curves whenever I touched her there. Could they possibly feel equally pleasant against mine? Looking down, I realized I appeared entirely like a woman from the waist down now, except for the small bulge at the front, which seemed to have been caused by my excitement over these pretty new shoes. I decided to wear a particularly colorful pair of Rebecca's dress slacks with the new patent flats instead of attempting anything as daring as a skirt. One step at a time, I reminded myself. Oh, I was absolutely right about those shoes, Rebecca declared when I emerged to show her. They are perfect on you, dear. And your fanny looks quite nice in my slacks, too, I must say. I believe you have been doing a little growing in certain places lately, honey, and it looks rather good on you. Before I could respond to that observation, she was standing directly in front of me, holding a plain white polyester blouse, just standing there, extending it toward me on one finger, with an expression on her face that clearly said, "Well, so what else could I possibly do?" I slipped it on over my head and smoothed it down over my torso. "Now, that is a lovely picture of my little housemate," she said with obvious satisfaction in her voice. "Stay exactly that way for me." I did exactly as I was told and found myself wondering why I had not simply gone ahead and put on a pair of panties and a bra in the first place. There were noticeable little bumps showing through the blouse after all. I had observed them developing before, of course, but wearing a feminine blouse without a t-shirt underneath made their presence remarkably obvious. They had grown so perky lately, impossible to ignore or conceal. Rebecca seemed positively effusive about my appearance, and I must confess, I genuinely liked the way I looked standing there in her clothes. Once I had perfected my cleaning and housekeeping routines, even adding the gardening responsibilities on top of the regular housework, laundry, and grocery shopping could not keep me sufficiently occupied throughout the day. Yet I genuinely did not want to fall back into my old habits of spending idle hours at the pool hall. Besides, I was no longer dressed appropriately for that masculine environment, and truthfully, I had come to enjoy the way I was dressed now. It suited me somehow. The gardening work, for which I also wore Rebecca's comfortable clothes and canvas sneakers, only required a couple of hours each week at most. I continued wearing the moccasins frequently during my indoor housework, but I always changed into my pretty patent skimmers, paired with Rebecca's slacks afterward. I had also taken to wearing sheer thigh-high stockings with them as a matter of daily habit now. Oh yes, I understood perfectly well that thigh-highs were ultra-feminine hosiery. But they looked so exceptionally pretty on my feet, and I genuinely enjoyed the sensation of wearing them. Looking down at my elegantly dressed feet throughout the day seemed to reinforce the reality that I had become the homemaker now, the lady of this house in every practical sense. One afternoon, before Rebecca arrived home from her shift, I experimented further. I changed into sheer pantyhose paired with some of her casual shorts, a romantic poet's blouse with billowing sleeves, and my favorite flats. The sensation gave me immediate goosebumps across my entire body. I felt so deliciously girlish and undeniably sexy. I had never worn pantyhose before that moment, feeling the smooth nylon encase my legs completely from waist to toe. The experience proved intoxicating, though I changed out of that particular ensemble before she returned home. Some experiments still felt too private to share. Rebecca suggested casually that I might as well wear blouses around the house on a regular basis, and so I did, pretty much abandoning my small collection of masculine shirts in favor of an expanding wardrobe of pretty feminine blouses in various styles and colors. Before long, there I was tending to the flower beds, dressed completely from head to toe, exactly as Rebecca herself would be, right down to her wide-brimmed gardening hat perched over my lengthening and now carefully maintained hair. One afternoon, a neighbor lady walking past our yard actually waved to me cheerfully and called out, "Hi, Joanne." I waved back with a friendly smile, not bothering to correct her mistake. That poor woman clearly needed a new optician, I thought to myself with some amusement. Certainly, I did not look anything like Rebecca. I had lost all that weight from my former frame, and our hair colors were entirely different shades. But still, under the circumstances, I supposed I could understand how she might have mistaken me for a woman from that distance. Perhaps it was the feminine clothing I wore, or maybe the ponytail sticking jauntily out through the opening at the top of the gardening hat. I was not even wearing any makeup at the time. Now, what had made me think about makeup just then? Did I actually want to wear cosmetics too? That unexpected thought produced a noticeable stir in my shorts. Naughty me, entertaining such ideas. Curiously, I noticed it was a considerably smaller rise than I would have expected from such an arousing notion. Something was definitely changing down there as well. Regardless, I desperately needed another hobby to replace my former pool hall pastime, and gardening alone was certainly not going to fulfill that need. I could not sew or knit or do any of those traditional domestic crafts. What on earth was I going to do with myself during those long afternoon hours? Then I fell into the trap that catches so many homemakers. I started watching a few of the daytime soap operas. Those programs proved remarkably addictive, I discovered. They were surprisingly racy, too, at times, featuring just about every variety of scandalous and unusual human behavior one could possibly imagine. The shows included numerous bedroom scenes as well, and as I watched them unfold on screen, I experienced a recurring little identity crisis, never quite certain with whom I identified more strongly, the handsome man or the beautiful woman in his arms. First, I watched for just 1 hour each day, then 2 hours, then 3 consecutive hours of melodrama consumed my afternoons. I recognized that I needed to break free from their grip, and so started watching some of the daytime talk shows instead, programs I had never been able to enjoy back when I worked regular hours at the plant. So there I would be each afternoon, pleasantly exhausted from my morning chores, curled up comfortably on the recliner in a pair of short shorts over sheer pantyhose, wearing Rebecca's mid-heeled sandals or my beloved patent skimmers, a pretty blouse completing the outfit, absorbing all that sensational talk show content into my brain while sipping contentedly on an iced tea. I had never realized I could curl up so comfortably before. My former muscles had always gotten in the way of such relaxed feminine postures, but now I had grown much more limber and flexible throughout my entire body. Regarding the sandals and other borrowed footwear, Rebecca herself had been the one to suggest I wear her clothes and shoes regularly, since I did not want to soil my remaining masculine garments, and hers proved so much more comfortable anyway. I had felt somewhat self-conscious about the arrangement at first, but I eventually got over those reservations completely. All of a sudden, wearing her things seemed perfectly logical for reasons I could not quite articulate. On certain occasions, I even experimented with sandals featuring somewhat higher heels and discovered them both surprisingly sexy and remarkably comfortable for extended wear. I would greet Rebecca at the front door each evening, dressed in my feminine garb, looking as attractive as I possibly could manage for her arrival home. To describe my typical ensemble more precisely, I would be wearing a flattering blouse, sheer hosiery, my patent skimmers, or perhaps a pair of her dressier pumps, and tailored dress slacks that showed off my changing figure. "You are doing a truly beautiful job with everything, honey," she told me one evening, with obvious appreciation. "Our home looks absolutely lovely, and I certainly do not mind if you look a little beautiful yourself these days. I do not mind at all if you want to become somewhat more, shall we say, ornamental around here," she added with a playful little wink that made my heart flutter unexpectedly. "I think you deserve to look a little pretty if you have to stay home and slave over a hot stove all day," she continued warmly. She did not need to wink at me twice for me to understand that she was genuinely enjoying the sight of me dressed like a girl. The realization settled over me with surprising comfort rather than alarm. I had finally reasoned through the situation logically. My wholehearted embrace of this new domestic role and all the accompanying femininity simply had to be connected to my medication. I felt so remarkably mellow now after several months of faithfully taking those pills and receiving those weekly injections. My body had been doing some rather interesting things as well, changes that seemed to encourage me toward becoming more and more feminine with each passing week. If these developments continued at their current pace, I would soon require a proper bra, with genuine support, rather than just soft cup training styles. Rebecca's slacks had also grown noticeably snug around my hips and backside lately, straining at seams that had fit comfortably just weeks before. I came to agree with her assessment of the situation, and so I began experimenting with a few more items from her wardrobe. Not her dresses, I assured myself. That remained a line I was not quite ready to cross. But I did try on a pair of her high-heeled pumps one afternoon when she was at work, and I felt deliciously naughty doing it too. I had put on a pair of sheer thigh-high stockings first to complete the experience properly. What an absolute rush that proved to be. I experienced quite a powerful reaction, goosebumps spreading across my skin, and my borrowed panties growing uncomfortably tight as evidence of my arousal. I had to excuse myself to the bathroom to relieve the building pressure, if you understand my meaning. After that threshold had been crossed, I began regularly borrowing her jeans, slacks, flats, and the occasional blouse. I even ventured into wearing her skirts from time to time. I discovered that I genuinely enjoyed skirts once I mastered the particular way of moving they required. They offered a freedom of movement that pants could never provide, and they caressed my nylon-covered legs with every step I took, making me feel thoroughly girlish and feminine. The sensation intensified considerably when I paired a skirt with high heels. It was a rather thrilling feeling that aroused me consistently, but I'm afraid I had begun walking like a girl absolutely all the time now, even when not consciously thinking about my movements. The other wives I encountered at the market had become ever so friendly with me of late. They no longer treated me anything like a man anymore. I had somehow crossed an invisible threshold into their world. Over the following weeks, I must have tried on every piece of Rebecca's casual wardrobe at least once. I was beginning to feel, I cannot quite explain it properly, somehow more at home in her clothes than in anything remaining from my own masculine collection. There was simply no telling what she might come home and discover me wearing on any given evening, but she never once complained about my borrowing her things. In fact, she usually had something encouraging to say about my appearance, unless I had egregiously mismatched colors or fabrics or committed some other fashion offense. Through her gentle corrections and guidance, I began receiving an education in the subtle art of color coordination and style. I was also absorbing lessons in something I had not consciously considered, namely my proper feminine sizes in various clothing categories, and, ever so subtly, the appropriate demeanor expected when wearing such garments. I was moving quite differently than I used to, acting more in harmony with how I was dressed, I suppose, more like a woman in every gesture and motion. Then, one Friday evening, Rebecca arrived home and informed me that I had an appointment scheduled with the doctor for Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Oh, for pity's sake, Rebecca, what in the world am I going to wear? Just look at me standing here. I do not even fit into any of my male clothes anymore. Everything hangs wrong or will not button. What am I possibly going to do? Oh, please, sweetie, just get over it, she said with affectionate exasperation. Do you not think the doctor fully expected something like this to happen? That was rather the entire point of the treatment. If you absolutely must fret about it, just wear a nice pair of slacks and a flattering blouse with appropriate lingerie underneath and your comfortable flats. A touch of lipstick and some blusher on your cheeks might be a sensible idea too, to give you a bit of color. Really? I asked incredulously. Lipstick. You actually want me to wear lipstick to a doctor's appointment? Yes, honey. Lipstick. You have become quite cute, you know. Besides, you do not look much like a boy anymore, in case you had not noticed. I took her advice and prepared myself accordingly. We went together to the appointment. I say we because I was absolutely terrified at the prospect of being out in public with makeup on my face, looking so thoroughly girlish, and visiting this particular doctor who had last seen me presenting as an ordinary male seeking treatment for depression. As we entered his consultation room, he positively beamed at the sight of us and said warmly, "Ah, the Blasdales. Come right in, girls." "Hello, doctor," Rebecca replied comfortably on our behalf. "Just slip up here on the examination table, Dylan, and please remove your blouse and bra for me." Although thoroughly embarrassed by all of this, I did exactly as directed. My compliance elicited an approving response from him. "Well now, we have certainly come a long way since your first visit, have we not? Tell me, are you still going by Dylan these days?" "Why, yes, doctor, I am. Why do you ask?" He gestured toward my chest with a knowing smile. "Those are developing quite nicely, dear. Perfectly healthy tissue. Very encouraging progress." He scribbled on his prescription pad for a moment before tearing off several sheets. "Here are some new prescriptions for you. Get them filled promptly and simply continue feeling good about yourself. However, I would really give some serious thought to a name change if I were you. Something more fitting for your current presentation. Madison, perhaps? Madison has a lovely ring to it. Something along those lines would suit you nicely now, I should think. Does that sound acceptable?" Certainly, doctor. If you genuinely believe that would be best. Rebecca and I will need to discuss this together, I think." Our conversation during the drive home proved rather animated, with Rebecca enthusiastically presenting all the compelling reasons why the doctor's suggestion made perfect logical sense. Damn it all, I finally admitted to myself. It did make perfect sense. Both Rebecca and the doctor wanted me to feel genuinely happy and comfortable in my new role. And what exactly was my new role at this point? Housewife. That was precisely what I had become. Complete with developing breasts and increasingly rounded buttocks, long and carefully maintained wavy hair, daily makeup application, and elegantly polished fingernails. By the time we pulled into our driveway, the decision had been made. I would take the name Madison after my Irish grandmother on my mother's side. Madison for everyday use among friends. That was the last occasion I can remember anyone calling me Dylan. The name simply faded away, belonging to someone I used to be. Something curious had happened to me. Ever since I had transformed into this neat freak housewife type, I seemed to experience a persistent urge to look the part completely, and then some beyond that. I understood intellectually that these feelings might be considered wrong by conventional standards. Well, Perhaps not wrong exactly, but they surely felt like they ought to be somehow inappropriate. I should not be feeling this way about myself, and yet I undeniably did. Well, I did not truly believe I should feel this way. At least not according to everything I had been taught growing up. And yet Rebecca did not seem to mind my transformation in the slightest. In fact, she appeared to welcome it enthusiastically. The whole situation simply felt so comfortable and right, given my current circumstances. I had always considered the expression house husband somewhat demeaning when applied to other men, but curiously, the term housewife carried no such negative connotation for me, even when it described my own situation. Madison Henderson, housewife. The phrase possessed a pleasant ring to it. House husband, by contrast, held a strangely discordant quality that jarred against my evolving sense of self. My feelings toward my breadwinner had taken on a decidedly wifely character, almost from the very beginning of this new round of medication. I had begun perceiving Rebecca as our provider and protector, while viewing myself as the homemaker and nurturer. The ancient division of labor had reasserted itself in our household, only with the roles reversed from traditional expectations. It was now she who ventured out to slay the metaphorical deer each day, and I who would lovingly prepare and serve it upon her return. I was learning to become a good housewife, and the process brought me unexpected satisfaction. Some of the daytime talk shows I watched grew rather provocative in their subject matter, especially when they featured unusual guests with unconventional life experiences. I remember one particular afternoon when this charismatic host presented a program featuring several individuals who had undergone or were planning to undergo gender reassignment procedures. He conducted a remarkably respectful program, nothing at all like the constant censorship bleeps one encountered on more sensationalistic shows. I found myself utterly captivated by the guests. Some of them were absolutely gorgeous, so completely and authentically feminine in their presentation that I would never have suspected their history. Even their voices fell well within the normal range for any woman walking down the street. Fascinating, I thought, unable to look away from the screen. One guest had even brought her fiancé along to the program. He seemed like a perfectly ordinary, well-adjusted man who clearly adored her. I had a terrible time identifying anything wrong with the way any of them looked or conducted themselves. Nor could I perceive anything remotely immoral about their words or the choices they had made. I was, in fact, hard-pressed to find anything objectionable about their simply being true to themselves. I wonder what they experience, I found myself thinking, presenting themselves as women every single day, taking hormone treatments, growing substantial breasts and feminine curves. Of course, I had realized by this point that I was developing a modest set of my own, but nothing approaching the impressive figures some of those women displayed on screen. And could I possibly raise my voice to a more feminine pitch the way they had learned to do? It seemed like an innocent enough thought at the time, despite the fact that I was sitting there dressed entirely in Rebecca's clothing. A telltale little bulge showed at the front of my back-zipped slacks, which concealed a pair of black satin panties underneath. The slacks ended in a pair of pretty patent pumps with 2-inch heels that I had recently added to my growing collection. Yes, I had decided to experiment with higher heels, and I discovered that I genuinely enjoyed wearing them. The added height and the way they shaped my posture pleased me enormously. So sue me for embracing these feminine pleasures. Whether consciously or not, I began paying closer attention to my voice during those weeks. I purposefully started using less of its full range, allowing sounds to emerge more from my throat than resonating deeply in my chest. I sang along with songs on the radio during my housework and gradually trained myself to maintain a more feminine register, approaching something close to an alto range. Why was I doing this? I occasionally wondered during moments of clarity. Was it merely a game I was playing with myself? Was it simply an elaborate exercise in pretending? Or was my mind working subtle feminine transformations behind the scenes while I went innocently through the motions of daily life? Was I genuinely becoming Madison in some fundamental way? I am a man, I reminded myself firmly one afternoon. Well, perhaps not a man in the conventional sense anymore, but certainly a genetic male at minimum. Yet the word man carried other connotations that I was not exactly living up to at the present moment. Was I? No, I most certainly was not. In truth, I was feeling more thoroughly feminine with each passing day as I went about my domestic responsibilities, dressed in completely female clothing, from the innermost layer of lingerie to the outermost accessories. I had begun to genuinely appreciate the way I looked in mirrors, and to love the sensation of delicate undergarments against my skin, and the pleasant lightness of feminine clothing compared to the heavy fabrics of menswear. Eventually, I did have to begin wearing a proper bra with actual support. Rebecca purchased an A cup for me initially, and it fit my developing figure perfectly. My breasts had grown so remarkably responsive to touch that Rebecca was having considerable fun exploring them during our intimate moments together. The sensations they produced proved far more intense than anything I had experienced in my former body. I began noticing a new habit whenever I passed a mirror in our home. I would automatically pause to check my reflection and ensure I looked presentable. Was my hair clean and shiny and falling properly into place? Was my blouse tucked in neatly at the waist? Were there any visible wrinkles or imperfections in my outfit? Yet even as I performed these inspections, I recognized that something remained missing from the image I so desperately wanted to see reflected back at me. This entire transformation had unfolded so subtly over the preceding months. Rebecca had never applied any overt pressure whatsoever. Everything had progressed as a seemingly natural evolution toward dressing and behaving like a proper housewife. Like a woman, in other words. Perhaps that progression was not entirely natural in the strictest sense, but it felt absolutely right to me. From my admittedly limited exposure to feminine things, I had discovered that I vastly preferred the look and feel of women's clothing and shoes compared to anything from the men's department. I was the woman of this house now, and everything about my presentation should reflect that reality. I had begun devoting considerably more attention to my hair and nails lately as well. I kept my hair perpetually clean and lustrous and carefully styled, and I maintained my nails in pristine condition, protecting them from damage and encouraging their growth just as Rebecca cared for hers. I let them extend to an elegant feminine length, shaping them with a file into graceful rounded curves rather than roughly clipping them straight across, as I had done in my former life. I applied hand lotion religiously throughout the day now, and coated my nails with hardener and protective layers of clear polish to keep them strong and beautiful. One afternoon, I noticed that when I wore open sandals, my toenails looked rather neglected and unfeminine by comparison. So I treated myself to a thorough pedicure and painted them with a pretty shade of deep polish that caught my eye whenever I glanced down at my feet. And would you not know it, Rebecca came home that very evening to discover me, bustling about the kitchen dressed in a white ruffled blouse, accessorized with a delicate ceramic necklace, feminine slacks featuring a back zipper cinched with a bright red belt, and red leather skimmer flats worn over sheer thigh-high stockings. My familiar apron was tied securely around my waist as I prepared dinner, looking for all the world like her perfect little housewife, eagerly awaiting her husband's return from work. The sight did not seem to faze her in the slightest. It was almost as though she genuinely wanted me to look and behave like a woman, a devoted housewife, a contented homebody ready to greet her and express happiness at her safe return from another long shift. At minimum, I felt certain she wanted me to find happiness in my circumstances. Something was going seriously askew with this picture, I realized, especially since I felt remarkably good and increasingly comfortable about both my attire and my submissive domestic attitude. "Why, honey," she said warmly as she set down her bag. "You look very nice this evening. Very sweet and feminine. I am genuinely glad you decided to make yourself comfortable exploring my closet. I want you to feel free to use absolutely anything you find among my things that fits you properly. Anything at all. Do you understand what I am saying? It is very important to me that you feel both useful and comfortable in your position as the lady of this house. The lady, I repeated softly, testing the word on my tongue. Well, you certainly are the lady when I am not here, are you not? There is really no point in arguing that particular point at this stage, is there? Not really, I admitted quietly. There was no honest way to dispute what had become obvious. Promise me you will help yourself to whatever you need from my wardrobe. You mean anything as in absolutely everything? Slips, skirts, dresses, and high heels too? Certainly, honey. If you enjoy wearing them, then by all means wear them. I do not think it would be fair of me to leave you with all this feminine domestic work, and then refuse to let you actually be a girl while you are performing it, especially if you find pleasure in the experience. That is part of the doctor's quick and dirty adjustment therapy, after all, making you completely comfortable in your new role. I believe it will not be much longer before we could even style your hair properly, teach you about nice cosmetics, and transform you into a very attractive little housefrau, Madison. I recognized that I did not seem to be protesting any of this very strenuously, I said hesitantly. But Becca, do you actually— you genuinely seem to want me to become truly feminine, to assume the role of a total wife, perhaps even to become essentially female in presentation. I confess I do not fully understand your motivations here. Have you taken a good, honest look at yourself in a mirror lately, Madison? Yes, I have. And the reflection is becoming a little frightening, I must admit. Yet at the same time, it feels absolutely scrumptious, especially with all the remarkable changes my body seems to be undergoing on its own. You have unconsciously adopted many of the mannerisms of those women on the soap operas you watch, she observed, and you are currently dressed in my clothing from head to toe, without a single masculine item anywhere on your person. Have you paid attention to how you have been walking lately? Have you noticed your hand gestures when you speak? You are becoming noticeably effeminate, sweetie. You have begun to act and react exactly like a girl in virtually every situation, which should actually improve our marriage considerably, because I understand girls so much better than I ever understood men. Tell me honestly, I hope you are wearing panties underneath those slacks. Well, of course I am wearing panties, I replied with a hint of indignation. I would feel completely out of place in those old jockey shorts at this point. They simply do not fit my body properly anymore. Good. Then I believe it is time you went the rest of the way with your transformation. You really should become accustomed to the feel of an appropriately sized bra as well, because the one you are currently wearing is far too small for your developing figure. I actually think you are going to end up bigger than I am in that department, honey. Your breasts are going to continue growing, and there is a padded C-cup in my drawer that I purchased specifically for you. Go try it on when you have a moment. That little A-cup is practically choking your chest and looks ready to burst at the seams. Why in the world would I need— What exactly would that be for? You simply cannot be a proper housewife without wearing a correctly sized bra. That is what for. Even though you do not quite fill a C-cup just yet. The padding will help until you grow into it naturally. You must think I do not listen carefully to what you say, Becca. Yet? Did you just say yet? Have you not been looking at yourself lately, Madison? Really looking with honest eyes? You have developed lovely, genuinely female breasts at this point. They are already nearly as large as mine, possibly larger. And seeing you settle so naturally into this domestic role has given me some rather nifty ideas for our future together. As hard as I work every single day, standing on my feet through exhausting shifts, I believe I truly deserve a pretty housewife waiting to greet me when I come home each evening. I think I am going to transform you into my perfect little Madison for real. My pretty husband slash housewife slash lover, all wrapped into one devoted package, and we are going to have an absolute blast together throughout the entire process. You are already becoming quite noticeably girlish, although you probably have not fully recognized the extent of the changes. And those feminine blouses you favor would look so much more flattering, with a bit more to fill them out properly. And you genuinely believe I am simply going along willingly with this forced feminization of my body and identity? Forced? She laughed at the word. All right then, Tell me honestly, Madison, how exactly have I forced you into anything so far? Well, you did give me permissy. Giving you permission to do something you so obviously enjoy doing is hardly the same as forcing you, dear. Now is it? No, I replied meekly, unable to formulate a valid counterargument. Have you been studying yourself in a mirror lately, sweets? All you really need at this point is a little less thickness around your waistline, the right feminine hairstyle professionally done, and some serious cosmetics skillfully applied. So far, I have not forced anything upon you whatsoever. You have fallen into this feminine role as though it were absolutely meant for you from the very beginning. We will get you properly fitted into a waist cincher to refine your silhouette, and you will wear a supportive bra constantly from now on. After we double the dosage on your weekly injections and spend a few months with you taking twice the daily pills, you will simply adore every aspect of your new existence. You will never want to look back at your former masculine life. I promise I will bring you to heights of physical ecstasy as a woman that you never even knew existed when you were living as a man. Just wait and see what pleasures await you. Listen carefully, Rebecca. Dressing up in feminine clothing is one thing entirely, but growing genuinely large breasts is quite another matter altogether. I do not really mind the modest size they have reached currently, but hush now. It has already been decided. You are going to become a girl, my girl, and you are going to be all girl, completely and thoroughly feminine in every possible way. I found myself at a complete loss for words, so I simply remained silent. A disturbing image flashed unbidden through my mind, a guillotine blade falling and my severed head tumbling into the waiting basket below. My fate had been sealed, and there was apparently nothing more to discuss. I received my first enhanced injection the very following day. I never should have sent her to nursing school, I thought ruefully as the needle slipped beneath my skin. She possessed all the medical knowledge and access she needed to reshape me according to her vision. I think I am going to absolutely love how this transformation turns out, she said with obvious anticipation as she administered the dose. Just wait patiently and see. You will love it too, I promise you that. You are going to discover that your developing breasts are so much fun to have, and I am personally going to adore seeing you fill out a D-cup bra. So much for the gratitude I expected from financing her nursing education. The next thing I knew, I would probably be nursing her at my own swollen breasts. She explained the medical details to me with clinical precision. One injection would completely block all my remaining testosterone production. That was a new prescription she had obtained directly from my doctor, specifically for this accelerated phase of treatment. The other injection contained a significantly more powerful formulation of estrogen that would dramatically reshape my body while simultaneously causing me to think and behave like a genuine girl. Just like her, she said with satisfaction. I am going to develop really substantial breasts and a generously rounded backside, am I not? Just like the rest of us women, honey. And it will not take very long at all now that we have increased your dosages. I'm determined to see you filling out a D-cup if I possibly can. You want to possess a genuinely nice feminine figure, do you not? I already have a decent figure, I protested weakly. Oh, but as Dylan, you always looked so terribly frail and sickly thin. As Madison, you are going to look so much healthier and more attractive. These enhanced injections will help you regain some of the weight you lost after the accident, and wearing the waist cincher constantly will force all that returning body fat to settle into precisely the right feminine places. It is called figure training, dear, a time-tested technique. Not too much weight, I hope, I said with genuine concern creeping into my voice. If I am going to look like a proper girl, I certainly do not want to end up resembling some shapeless creature in a muumuu dress. With that statement, I realized with sudden clarity that I had essentially accepted her terms and embraced my inevitable fate. The negotiation had ended, and I had capitulated completely. We will certainly try to avoid that outcome, dear. I have no desire to find myself married to a cow either. Besides, I want the two of us to still be able to share our wardrobes freely. That requires us maintaining similar figures. Just 2 days later, I found myself wearing a firm waist cincher beneath all my clothing throughout every waking hour. I had to admit, despite my initial reservations, that I genuinely appreciated the way it made my slacks and shorts fit my body. The garment felt rather uncomfortable at first, constricting my midsection in unfamiliar ways, but I gradually adjusted to the constant pressure. Rebecca absolutely refused to let me remove it except during bathing, and the cincher made my posterior appear remarkably round and enticingly full. She informed me that I would need to wear it faithfully for at least a couple of months and simply learn to accept it as part of my daily existence. The device effectively forced my body to conform more closely to the natural differences in fat distribution between male and female bodies. My backside had suddenly become far more impressive than before, almost cute in its rounded prominence. Flesh does tend to assume the shape of whatever constrains it, a principle the Chinese understood intimately for thousands of years. After all, they used to bind young women's feet tightly to prevent them from growing to normal size. The practice conveniently made it considerably more difficult for those women to run away from their circumstances. I tried not to dwell on that particular parallel to my own situation. Rebecca and I had always enjoyed entertaining guests in our home, and she had recently cultivated several new friendships among colleagues at the hospital. Women from her floor who worked the same demanding shifts, you understand. I believe she wanted to show off a little, to demonstrate how beautifully I maintained our house and tended our garden. She invited a nurse named Ashley to stop by after work one afternoon for a tour of the place, along with a cup of fresh coffee and a generous slice of the cake I had just finished baking that morning. Oh, I neglected to mention that development earlier. I had gradually taken over all the cooking responsibilities as well. It turned out that I possessed a genuine flair for culinary arts, a talent I never even suspected I harbored within me. I discovered that I thoroughly enjoyed the creative process of preparing meals. I had begun surprising Rebecca with elaborate gourmet dishes on random evenings lately, and she genuinely appreciated those unexpected treats. She said my efforts made her feel truly special and cherished. I found that I loved making her feel special. The dynamic reminded me increasingly of how my mother had always treated my father throughout their marriage. Now I was actively trying to emulate my own mother. The realization should have disturbed me more than it did. I'm so delighted that you have really embraced this whole housewife lifestyle, Ashley declared warmly upon seeing our home. She planted a friendly little kiss on my cheek, where she must have detected the subtle fragrance of my Dior perfume lingering on my skin. This impromptu visit had caught me dressed once again in thoroughly feminine attire from head to toe. I wore a flattering sleeveless shell that showed off my slender arms, which were now adorned with a couple of delicate bangle bracelets and a distinctly feminine wristwatch. Underneath, I wore satin panties, and my legs were encased in sexily tight designer jeans over sheer knee-high stockings. On my feet, I wore a pair of 3-inch wedge-heeled raffia sandals that displayed my rose-colored toenails, recently painted by Rebecca herself during one of our intimate grooming sessions. I felt tremendously embarrassed at another woman seeing me presented this way, but I resolved to make the best of the awkward situation with grace and poise. I must have looked like quite the complete sissy standing there in my own kitchen. Another woman? I caught myself thinking. Notice where my mind had unconsciously strayed in its self-identification. With Rebecca standing right there beside us, Ashley actually spoke up and declared, "Madison, honey, you would really make someone an absolutely wonderful wife. In fact, you already do make Rebecca a wonderful wife. You even look the part completely. How utterly delicious this whole arrangement is." Initially, I assumed she was merely being playfully facetious, poking gentle fun at my expense, but I noticed she was not actually smiling as she spoke. Only the faintest hint of a knowing smile flickered briefly across her features, for just an instant before vanishing. And she had addressed me as Madison without any hesitation or awkwardness whatsoever. What could I possibly do in response? I simply said, "Well, thank you very much, Ashley. I am doing my absolute best to be everything Rebecca needs here at home, so that all she has to focus her energy on is her demanding work at the hospital. I know with certainty that she would do exactly the same for me if our situations were reversed." "Well, honey, you are succeeding beautifully at your role," Ashley replied with apparent sincerity. "I honestly could not manage this household any better myself, and I was actually raised as a girl from birth. You seem to have taken to this feminine domestic lifestyle remarkably well for someone who started from such a different place." "I believe she truly has adapted wonderfully," Rebecca chimed in with obvious pride in her voice. "That is a genuinely cute set of work clothes you are wearing too," Ashley added, gesturing toward my outfit with obvious approval. "They look very nice on you, quite flattering actually." "Oh, these are just some of Becca's cast-offs," I replied with a modest shrug. I really did not have anything appropriate of my own to work around the house in anymore. At least nothing that made me feel like someone who ought to be performing all this feminine domestic work every day. The masculine clothes from my former life simply felt wrong now, completely incongruous with my daily responsibilities and my evolving sense of self. For some reason I could not quite explain, I found myself unable to resist adding more to that thought. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "I suppose you are absolutely right about everything, Becca. When I really think about it honestly, about all that remains missing from my transformation at this point is professionally styling this unruly mop of hair into something properly feminine. Learning to apply some serious cosmetics with skill, acquiring a pretty dress or two for special occasions, and perhaps investing in some elegant high heels to complete the picture. Then I could truly embrace an entirely new life as your wife." A small giggle escaped my lips as I finished speaking, surprising even myself with its distinctly feminine sound. "Yeah," Rebecca agreed with a knowing smile spreading across her face. "That is precisely what I have been thinking as well, sweetheart." And with that, all three of us dissolved into warm, comfortable laughter together, the sound filling our beautifully maintained kitchen like music. Ashley raised her coffee cup in an impromptu toast, and Rebecca squeezed my hand affectionately while gazing at me with unmistakable love and pride in her eyes. Standing there in that moment, surrounded by feminine friendship and acceptance, wearing my pretty sandals and tight jeans and delicate jewelry, I realized that I had somehow found exactly where I belonged in this world. The accident that had once seemed like the worst tragedy of my young life had ultimately led me down an unexpected path toward genuine happiness and fulfillment. Madison Henderson, housewife. The title no longer felt strange or frightening. It simply felt like home.